My name is Alina Voss. I'm 32 years old. And 3 nights ago, my older brother looked straight at me across a table of investors and said, "Oh, her? She's nobody, just family. Don't worry about her." I was sitting at the far end of the long table in a private dining room at Marchand's, the kind of restaurant where the menu doesn't list prices and the waiters move like ghosts. My brother Adrian had called me that morning, voice dripping with false warmth, asking if I wanted to join a casual family dinner. Nothing formal, he'd said, just catching up. What he didn't mention was that this casual dinner included 4 venture capitalists, 2 tech journalists, and his entire executive team from Voss Digital, the startup everyone kept calling the next big thing in AI-driven marketing analytics. When I walked in wearing jeans and a sweater because he'd said casual, every head turned. Adrian's smile tightened at the edges. One of the investors, a woman in a sharp black suit, glanced at me with polite confusion. "And you are?" Before I could answer, Adrian cut in with that line. "Oh, her. She's nobody, just family. Don't worry about her." The table laughed. Not cruel laughter, just the kind of reflexive chuckle people make when someone important tells a joke. They turned back to their apps and wine, dismissing me before I'd even pulled out my chair. I sat down slowly, my phone already buzzing in my pocket with a message I'd been waiting for all week. I didn't look at it yet. Instead, I looked at my brother, really looked at him. He was glowing in that way successful people glow when they're about to close a deal. His hair was perfectly styled. His shirt probably cost more than my rent, and his confidence filled the room like expensive cologne. He had no idea that the nobody sitting at the end of his table had spent the last 6 months quietly dismantling everything he'd built his empire on. None of them knew that the algorithm powering Voss Digital, the proprietary AI model he'd been pitching as revolutionary, the one that had investors throwing millions at him, wasn't his at all. It was mine. And I had the commit logs, the copyrights, and the lawyers to prove it. Before I tell you exactly what I said when I finally opened my mouth and watched my brother's face drain of color, tell me this. What time is it where you are right now, and where are you watching from? I want to see how far one word, nobody, can travel before it becomes somebody's worst nightmare. Growing up, Adrian and I weren't enemies. We were just different species living in the same house. He was the golden child from day one. Charismatic, athletic, the kid who could charm teachers into extending deadlines and talk his way out of trouble with a grin. Our parents, Michael and Patricia Voss, hung his soccer trophies on the mantle and framed his debate team certificates. When he got into Stanford, they threw a party with a caterer. I was the quiet one. The one who stayed in her room with headphones on, teaching herself to code while everyone else was at Adrian's games. When I got a full scholarship to MIT for computer science, my mom said, "That's wonderful, honey," and then asked if I could help set up the printer because it was acting weird again. That's how it always was. Adrian's wins were family celebrations. Mine were nice, honey. Now can you fix something for us? The first time Adrian stole from me, I didn't even realize it was theft. I was 19, home for winter break, working on a machine learning project for my AI ethics class. It was a simple sentiment analysis model, nothing groundbreaking, but I was proud of how clean my code was. Adrian wandered into my room one night, bored, and asked what I was working on. I showed him, excited to finally have someone interested. He sat on my bed, watching my screen as I walked him through the logic. "So it can tell if someone's being sarcastic or genuine in text?" he asked. "Basically, yeah. It analyzes linguistic patterns and contextual markers." "That's actually really cool, Ellie." He smiled at me, that big brother smile I'd always craved. "You're smarter than people give you credit for." I should have heard the warning in those words. Smarter than people give you credit for. Not just smart, smart relative to low expectations. 2 weeks later, he submitted a nearly identical concept to a campus pitch competition at Stanford and won 3rd place and $5,000. I found out through Instagram. A photo of him holding an oversized check, caption reading, "When your side project wins you $5K, sometimes the best ideas come when you're not even trying." Innovation AI startup. My hands shook as I scrolled through the comments. Congratulations poured in. Friends tagged him as an inspiration. Someone wrote, "Dude, you're going to change the world." I called him immediately. "Oh, hey, Ellie," he answered, sounding distracted. "What's up?" "You entered my project into a competition." "What? No, I entered my project. The one we talked about over break. The one I showed you, that I built, that I walked you through line by line." He laughed, not meanly, but dismissively, like I was a child who didn't understand how the adult world worked. "Relax, Ellie, you're in academics. I'm actually building something real with it. Besides, you showed it to me. What did you think I was going to do? Just forget about it? Ideas are cheap. Execution is what matters." I executed it. I wrote the entire model. And I took the concept and pitched it to actual investors. That's a skill too. Look, I gave you credit in the presentation. I said my sister helped with the initial brainstorming. Helped with brainstorming, not created the entire thing. Helped. I wanted to fight harder, but I was 19 and he was my older brother and our parents took his side without even hearing mine. When I told them what happened, my mother sighed like I was being exhausting. "Honey, Adrian said you worked on it together." That's how collaboration works. We didn't collaborate. I showed him my project and he stole it. My father set down his newspaper with that look, the one that meant I was about to be lectured about perspective. "You're being dramatic," he said. "Adrian gave you credit in his presentation. He said you helped with the initial concept. That's generous considering he's the one who had the courage to actually present it to people who matter." Generous, the word sat in my stomach like a stone. "Besides," my mother added, "you should be happy for your brother. $5,000 is a lot of money. Maybe he'll take you out to dinner with some of it." He didn't. I learned two things that winter. First, Adrian would always take what he wanted and reframe it as collaboration. Second, our parents would always believe his version of the story because his version made them look like they'd raised a genius instead of a thief. So I stopped showing him my work. I stopped telling the family anything that mattered. When I won a national hackathon 6 months later and got flown to San Francisco to present my distributed computing model to a panel of CTOs, I didn't tell anyone I was going. I just went. I placed second, won $10,000, and got 3 job offers. I came home with a check and a trophy. My mother noticed it on my desk a week later. "Oh, what's this from?" "A competition. I won second place." "That's nice, honey." She picked up the trophy, examined it without much interest, and set it back down. "Did you remember to RSVP for Adrian's networking event next month? He really wants family there." The trophy never made it to the mantle, but Adrian's $5,000 check photo was framed in the hallway. That's when I understood the truth. In my family, my achievements weren't ignored because they didn't matter. They were ignored because acknowledging them would mean acknowledging that Adrian wasn't the only successful one, and that would disrupt the narrative they'd spent years building. So I stopped waiting for them to celebrate me. I celebrated myself, quietly, in my own way. By the time I graduated MIT, I'd published 2 papers on algorithmic bias, consulted for 3 nonprofits on AI ethics, and started freelancing as a data scientist. My parents still introduced me as our daughter who does something with computers. Adrian, meanwhile, had launched his first failed startup, burned through investor money, and somehow came out of it with a TechCrunch profile calling him a visionary who learned from failure. The media loved a good comeback story. They didn't bother checking who actually wrote the code for his first platform. I was used to it by then, being invisible, being the footnote in Adrian's highlight reel. What I didn't know yet was that Adrian's need to take from me hadn't stopped. It had just been waiting for something big enough to steal. And when I finally built something revolutionary, something that could actually change how AI understood human behavior, he didn't just take the idea this time. He took everything. It started 8 months ago when Adrian called me out of the blue. "Ellie," his voice was warm, nostalgic even. "I know we haven't talked much lately, but I wanted to run something by you. I'm working on this new venture, AI-driven predictive analytics for marketing. I'm talking real behavioral modeling, not just the surface-level stuff everyone else is doing." I was in my apartment in Cambridge, surrounded by half-empty coffee cups and research papers. It was a Saturday afternoon, and I'd been debugging code for a nonprofit's bias detection tool for 6 hours straight. "Why are you calling me?" I asked, not bothering to hide my skepticism. He sighed, and it sounded genuine. "Because I need help, real help. And because you're the smartest person I know, even if I've been too much of an asshole to admit it before." I should have hung up. Every instinct I'd honed over a decade of being Adrian's little sister screamed at me to protect myself. But there was something in his voice. Not manipulation exactly, more like exhaustion. He sounded like he actually needed help, and more than that, like he actually respected what I could do. "I've got the business side locked down," he continued. "Investors are interested, the market's there, but the tech side, I'm out of my depth. I need someone who actually understands machine learning at a foundational level, someone I can trust." "You want me to consult?" I asked carefully. "I want you to build it with me," he said. "As a co-founder, equal partners. I handle the business, you handle the tech. 50-50 split on equity. Your name on everything. I'm serious, Ellie. I want to do this right." I actually laughed. "Adrian, you've never offered to split anything equally in your life." "I know." He paused, and in that silence I heard something I'd never heard from him before. Shame. "I know I've been a shitty brother. I know I took credit for your work before, and I'm sorry. I've been thinking about that a lot lately, about how I treated you. And I want to make it right, not with words but with action. This could be big, Ellie, and I don't want to build it without you. I don't want to build it on top of you. I want to build it with you." I stared at my laptop screen, at the code I'd been writing for free for an organization that could barely afford to pay me. I thought about my bank account, about the consulting gigs that barely covered rent, about the career I'd built in the shadows while Adrian soaked up spotlight after spotlight. "Let me think about it," I said. I didn't trust him. But the idea he'd described, the technical challenge of it, was genuinely interesting. Behavioral prediction modeling that went beyond surface-level data analysis. That was the kind of problem I dreamed about solving. And buried beneath years of resentment was a tiny, pathetic part of me that still wanted my brother to see me as an equal. That still remembered being 7 years old and watching him win his first soccer trophy, wishing that someday he'd look at me the way our parents looked at him. I called my friend Myra that night. She'd been my roommate at MIT and now worked as a product manager at a major tech company. "Tell me I'm insane for even considering this," I said. "You're insane for even considering this," she replied immediately. "Ellie, he's stolen from you before. Multiple times. Why would this be different?" He sounded different. Or he's gotten better at manipulation. Maybe, but what if he's actually changed? What if he really means it this time? Myra was quiet for a moment. "Do you want my honest answer or my supportive friend answer?" "Honest." "Honest answer. People like Adrian don't change unless they hit rock bottom. Has he hit rock bottom?" I thought about it. His last startup failed pretty publicly. He's been quiet for almost a year. Then maybe he did hit bottom. But Ellie, if you do this, protect yourself. Legally, financially, technically. Don't give him access to anything he could use without you, and the second it feels wrong, walk away." "I know." "Do you?" "Because you have this thing where you want to believe the best in people, especially family. And that's beautiful, but it's also how you get destroyed." She was right. I did want to believe in people. I wanted to believe my brother had learned, had grown, had finally realized that success built on stolen work was hollow. So I said yes, with conditions. I spent 2 weeks drafting a partnership agreement with my lawyer, Rebecca Chen. Every clause was designed to protect me. I would retain full ownership of any proprietary algorithms I developed. He would own the business entity, Voss Digital, but the core technology would be licensed to him under my terms. My name would be listed as co-founder and CTO on all legal documents, all investor decks, all patent applications. When I sent him the agreement, I half expected him to balk, to make excuses, to reveal that the whole equal partners thing had been bullshit. Instead, he called me. "This is perfect," he said. "Ellie, I know I have to earn your trust back. This is how I do it. Legal, official, no ambiguity. Send me the signature page. I'll sign today." He did, without hesitation. without trying to negotiate better terms for himself. For the first time in my adult life, I felt a tiny seed of hope that maybe, just maybe, we could actually be siblings who built something together instead of one who took and one who gave until there was nothing left. For 3 months, we actually worked well together. I'd send him technical updates, he'd send me investor pitch decks. We'd meet for coffee and talk strategy. During those meetings, he'd tell me about the investors he was courting, the objections they had, the numbers they wanted to see. I'd explain the technical limitations, what was realistic and what was science fiction. "You know what's funny?" he said during one meeting. "I spent years trying to prove I was smarter than you. And all it did was make me worse at everything." "What do you mean?" "I mean you were the one who actually understood how things worked. I just understood how to sell them. Instead of working together, I tried to compete." He shook his head. "I wasted a lot of time being an idiot." "You're not an idiot," I said quietly. "I was an idiot to you, and I'm sorry." It was the first real apology he'd ever given me. "Thank you," I said. He smiled. "We're going to build something amazing, Ellie. And this time, everyone's going to know it's ours. Together." I should have known better. I should have known better. The algorithm I built for Voss Digital was something I'd been theorizing about for years. A behavioral prediction model that didn't just track what users clicked on, but understood the emotional patterns behind their decisions. It analyzed microexpressions in video data, cross-referenced them with purchasing behavior, and built psychological profiles accurate enough to predict future actions with unsettling precision. It was powerful, maybe too powerful. I'd built in safeguards, ethical constraints, transparency layers. But the core tech was revolutionary. I kept detailed records of everything. Every commit to our private repository, every version of the algorithm, every email thread about technical decisions. My name was on every single file. Then, 4 months ago, everything changed. Adrian stopped responding to my messages as quickly. Our weekly check-ins got rescheduled, then quietly dropped. When I finally got him on the phone, he sounded distant. "Things are moving fast on the investor side. I need to focus on closing this round. We'll sync up after." Something in his tone felt off, like a door I'd gotten used to being open had suddenly locked. A week later, I got a LinkedIn notification. Adrian had updated his title, founder and CEO, Voss Digital, not co-founder. "Founder," I messaged him. He replied 3 days later. "We can sort out official titles when we do the next fundraising docs." I logged into our GitHub repository. Someone new had been added as a contributor, Mark Voss Digital. I called Adrian. Voicemail. He texted back, "That's Mark Chen, our new CTO. I was going to tell you, investors want to see a real team." Our new CTO, the title I was supposed to have. "Adrian, we had an agreement, I'm the CTO. You're still lead on the algorithm. Mark handles operational stuff. We can call you Chief AI Officer." "It's not a big deal." I screenshot our partnership agreement clause and sent it to him. No response. 2 weeks later, I got an email from a trademark attorney. "Patent applications for Voss Digital's core technology. Inventor listed, Adrian Voss." My name appeared once, in acknowledgments. "Special thanks to consulting engineer Alina Voss for early technical input." I called Adrian immediately. It went to voicemail. Finally, he texted, "Ellie, you're listed as a consultant on the paperwork. You'll get your fee." But investors want a clear ownership structure, and having the tech tied up in co-founder complications is killing the deal. This is just cleaner. "Trust me, you'll still get paid." "Consultant, you'll still get paid. We have a contract, Adrian, you're in breach." Don't be dramatic. Let's talk about this like adults after the funding closes. I logged into the repository where all my code lived. My access had been revoked. Have you ever watched someone you trusted take something irreplaceable from you and then smile while they do it? That's not betrayal. That's vivisection. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop open and felt something cold and surgical settle into my chest. If Adrian wanted to play the game this way, I'd show him exactly what happened when you stole from someone who understood systems better than he ever would. I called my lawyer, Rebecca Chen, a woman I'd worked with on a pro bono algorithmic accountability case years ago. She listened to everything, asked pointed questions, and then said, "Do you have proof the algorithm is yours?" Every commit log, every email, every version. All time-stamped, all under my credentials. Good. Do you have the original partnership agreement? Signed and notarized? Even better. I could hear her smile through the phone. Alina, your brother just handed you the easiest intellectual property theft case I've seen in years. But if you want to really make this hurt, we need to be smart about timing. What do you mean? He's about to close a funding round, right? Based on technology he claims is his. Series A, $8 million. Perfect, let him close it. Let him take the money, spend it, build his empire on your work. Then we show everyone the foundation is stolen. The investors won't just pull out, they'll come after him for fraud. My hands were shaking. That feels like justice, Rebecca finished, or revenge, depending on how you want to frame it. I thought about every time Adrian had taken credit for my work, every time my parents had dismissed my achievements while celebrating his, every time I'd swallowed the hurt because fighting back seemed too exhausting. Let's do it right, I said. Buy the book, but let's make sure when it hits hard. Over the next 4 months, Rebecca and I built our case like architects. We filed the copyright registrations for my algorithm under my name. We documented every instance where Adrian had used my work without attribution. We cataloged every email where he'd acknowledged my contributions, then compared them to public statements where he claimed sole authorship. And we waited. We waited while Adrian gave interviews calling himself a self-taught AI innovator. We waited while he hired a CTO who had no idea the codebase he was managing had been written entirely by someone else. We waited while Voss Digital closed their Series A funding round and Adrian's face appeared on magazine covers. We waited while my parents forwarded me articles about Adrian's incredible success, with subject lines like, "So proud." Every article, every accolade, every lie became another exhibit in our case file. Then, 3 nights ago, Adrian called and invited me to a casual family dinner. I knew exactly what it was, a victory lap, a chance to show me his world, the world he'd built on my work, and remind me that I was nobody in it. So I said yes. And I brought my phone with Rebecca on speed dial, ready to record everything. Sitting at that table in Marchand's, listening to my brother pitch his revolutionary algorithm to investors who had no idea they were funding theft, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Calm. Adrian was midway through his presentation, using a tablet to show projected growth charts, when one of the investors, the woman in the black suit, asked a technical question. "The behavioral prediction model," she said, leaning forward. "You mentioned it analyzes microexpressions. What training dataset did you use for emotional recognition? That's notoriously difficult to do without bias." Adrian's smile didn't waver, but I saw his eyes flick toward his CTO, Mark, a nervous-looking guy in his 40s who joined the company 2 months ago. Mark cleared his throat. We used a proprietary dataset, curated specifically for unbiased emotional representation across demographics. I almost laughed. That dataset had taken me 8 months to build. I'd personally vetted every single entry for bias, worked with ethics consultants, and published a paper on the methodology. The investor nodded, satisfied. Impressive. That kind of rigor is rare. Adrian jumped back in. We don't cut corners on the tech side. It's what separates us from everyone else in the space. That's when my phone buzzed. A text from Rebecca, Patent Office just published their filings. All 3 patents list Adrian Voss as sole inventor. We have grounds. Do you want to move now? I looked up at my brother. He was laughing at something one of the journalists had said, completely at ease, king of his stolen empire. I typed back, yes. Then I set my phone on the table, screen up, and said, "Actually, I have a question." The table went quiet. A few people looked at me with mild surprise, as if they'd forgotten I was there. Adrian's smile tightened. "Ellie, we're in the middle of." "It'll just take a second," I said pleasantly. I turned to Mark. "That proprietary dataset you mentioned, the one for unbiased emotional recognition. Can you tell me who built it?" Mark blinked. It was developed in-house by our data team. Really? Because I built that dataset, personally. It took me 8 months, and I published the methodology in the Journal of AI Ethics last year. The paper's called Debiasing Effective Computing Through Demographic Intentionality. You can look it up. The investor's eyes sharpened. She pulled out her phone. Adrian's face went very still. Ellie, what are you doing? I'm clarifying, I said. My voice was steady, calm. Because you introduced me as nobody, and I think these people deserve to know who nobody actually is. I stood up, every eye at the table locked onto me. My name is Alina Voss. I have a PhD in computer science from MIT. For the past 8 months, I've been quietly filing copyright claims and documenting intellectual property theft. The algorithm that powers Voss Digital, the behavioral prediction model you've been pitching as revolutionary, I wrote every line of it. The training datasets, the ethical frameworks, the neural network architecture, all mine. One of the journalists started typing on his phone. Adrian stood up too, his chair scraping back. This is insane. You were a consultant. You signed. I signed a partnership agreement that explicitly stated I retain ownership of proprietary algorithms I developed. I cut in. You revoked my access to the repository, stripped my name from patent applications, and committed fraud when you told investors this technology was developed in-house. I have commit logs. I have emails. I have timestamp documentation of every technical decision, all under my credentials. The investor in the black suit set down her wine glass very carefully. Adrian, is this true? She's bitter, Adrian said quickly. We had a disagreement about equity, and she's trying too. I pulled a folder from my bag. Inside were printed copies of the partnership agreement, highlighted commit logs, and a letter from my attorney outlining our copyright claims. I slid it across the table to the investor. Everything's in there, I said. You can verify it independently. The Copyright Office has my registrations. The code repository history is timestamped. And as of this morning, my legal team filed a formal lawsuit for intellectual property theft, breach of contract, and fraud. The room was so silent, I could hear someone's phone vibrate on the other end of the table. The investor opened the folder. Her expression shifted from polite interest to cold focus as she scanned the first page. Adrian's face had gone from confident to pale to something approaching panic. Ellie, he said, and for the first time in my life, I heard fear in his voice. Can we talk about this privately? No, I said. You called me nobody in front of these people, so they get to hear who nobody really is. I turned to address the whole table. Adrian Voss built his company on stolen technology. The patents he filed list him as the sole inventor, but every algorithm, every dataset, every technical innovation came from me. He locked me out of my own work and rebranded it as his, and when I asked to be credited, he offered to pay me a consulting fee. I looked at my brother. His hands were gripping the edge of the table. You wanted to know what I'd do, I said quietly. If you took everything from me and expected me to smile and stay silent, this is what I do, I take it back. The investor closed the folder and looked at Adrian. We're going to need to pause this dinner and schedule an emergency call with our legal team. One of the other VCs was already standing up, phone to his ear. The journalists were taking notes, and Adrian just stood there, frozen, as his carefully constructed world collapsed in real time. Would you stay silent if someone erased you, or would you wait until the exact moment your voice could destroy them? The aftermath happened faster than I expected. Within 24 hours, the investors had pulled their term sheet. By the end of the week, 2 of Adrian's key executives had resigned. The tech journalists who'd been at the dinner published pieces with headlines like Voss Digital founder accused of IP theft and the AI startup built on stolen code. My lawsuit moved forward. Rebecca was methodical, adding evidence as Adrian's team scrambled to respond. They tried to claim I'd been adequately compensated as a consultant. We showed the partnership agreement. They tried to argue the algorithm was collaborative work. We showed commit logs proving I was the only contributor to the core code base. They had nothing. Because Adrian had been so confident he'd gotten away with it, he hadn't bothered to cover his tracks. But the legal case wasn't the hardest part. The hardest part was what happened with my family. My mother called 2 days after the dinner, her voice tight. "Elena, what have you done?" "I protected my work," I said. "You've humiliated your brother publicly. Do you know what people are saying about him, about our family?" "Do you know what he did to me?" I asked. "Or do you just not care?" There was a long silence. "He's your brother," she finally said. "You're supposed to support each other." I tried that. "He stole from me." "You're being dramatic. This is business. These things happen." That's when I realized she would never understand. To her, Adrian's reputation mattered more than the fact that he'd committed fraud. Protecting the family image was more important than protecting me. "I'm done," I said. "I'm done pretending this is normal. I'm done letting him take from me and then watching you defend him. If you want to keep him as your golden child, fine. But I'm not going to be the one who stays silent so he can shine." I hung up before she could respond. My father sent an email. It was short. "You're tearing this family apart. I hope you're proud of yourself." I didn't reply. Adrian himself didn't contact me directly. Instead, his lawyer sent a letter offering a settlement. They dropped their defense of the lawsuit if I agreed to license the technology to Voss Digital under reasonable terms and sign an NDA about the circumstances. Rebecca laughed when she read it. "They want you to give them the algorithm anyway and never tell anyone they stole it." That's bold. "What do you think?" I asked. "I think we go to trial and we win everything. The algorithm writes, damages for lost equity, possibly even criminal referrals for fraud. But that's the nuclear option. It'll take years, and it'll burn every bridge with your family." I thought about the dinner, about Adrian's face when he introduced me as nobody, about every year of being invisible in my own family. "Let it burn," I said. The trial took 8 months. During that time, I stopped going to family events. I stopped responding to my parents' emails asking me to be reasonable. I stopped being the person who swallowed hurt to keep the peace. I built a new life instead. I started consulting independently, working with companies that actually valued ethical AI development. I published papers. I spoke at conferences. I became the person I'd always been too scared to be when I was busy trying to earn my family's approval. And I won. The court ruled in my favor on every count. I retained full ownership of the algorithm. Voss Digital was ordered to cease using any of my technology immediately and pay damages for the revenue they generated from it. Adrian was personally liable for breach of contract and fraud. Voss Digital collapsed within weeks. Without the core algorithm, they had nothing to offer investors. The company dissolved. Adrian's reputation was destroyed. My parents sent one final email after the verdict. It said, "We hope you're satisfied. You've destroyed your brother's career and our family's name. Don't expect us to forgive this." I read it once, then archived it, because here's what I learned. Some families are bound by love. Some are bound by obligation and control disguised as love. And sometimes the kindest thing you can do for yourself is to recognize the difference and walk away. 6 months after the trial, I was keynoting a tech ethics conference when someone approached me during the reception. "Doctor." Voss, a young woman, probably mid-20s, with bright eyes and a nervous smile. "I just wanted to say thank you. I read about your case. I've been working at a startup where my boss has been taking credit for my work, and I kept telling myself it was normal, that I should be grateful to even have the job. Your story made me realize I didn't have to accept that." "What did you do?" I asked. "I documented everything, just like you did. And last week I reported him to the board. They're investigating now." She paused. "It's scary. But I keep thinking about what you said in that interview, that being nobody is only permanent if you accept it." So I stopped accepting it. I felt something crack open in my chest, something warm and unexpected. "I'm proud of you," I said. She smiled, thanked me again, and disappeared back into the crowd. That night, alone in my hotel room, I thought about the dinner at Marchand's. About sitting at that table and hearing my brother call me nobody. About the humiliation, the rage, the cold decision to stop protecting him and start protecting myself. If I could go back, would I do anything differently? No. Because the person who walked into that restaurant was someone who'd spent her whole life being erased. And the person who walked out was someone who finally understood that your worth doesn't come from the people who refuse to see it. It comes from the moment you stop waiting for their permission to exist. So here's my question for you. If you've ever been called nobody by someone who should have known better, what would it take for you to prove them wrong? And when you finally find your voice, will you use it to whisper or to make sure everyone hears exactly who you've always been? Because I'll tell you what I learned. Nobody is just a word. It only has power if you believe it. And I stopped believing a long time ago.